Welcome to Vital Talk, discussions on technology. I'm Scott Rude with founder of vitaltech, Sean Vitale. Today, our topic is on how to best migrate to the cloud. Sean, let's start as simple as possible. What is the cloud?
The cloud it's actually, that's a really simple question to answer, to be honest with you. And the honest answer is it's just taking your data or your IT services and moving it away from your local infrastructure to somebody else's infrastructure, hosted somewhere else. This has been going on it's been going on forever, since the first websites were built. No one ever hosted really their own, I don't say no one, but most people didn't host their own websites. They were always hosted somewhere else. It's as simple as that. That's the cloud.
If you or your business are considering moving from a local server, or in addition to moving their data to a cloud, how do you decide? What are the advantages and disadvantages?
Yeah, so it's hard. That's hard to answer because it all depends on the size of the company. It depends on what industry you're in. It kind of depends on the mentality of the owners. There's financial decisions that are all part of it. I like to approach it by considering 4 different factors, and the first of the 4 is stability. So how stable do you want your environment? That relates to uptime. Obviously, uptime relates to production within the business, and that's what we use our IT services for. So again, I ask, how stable do you want the environment? If you want it extremely stable, you're going to have to kind of pony up and spend all the money that Microsoft spends on their infrastructure. They have tons of redundancy, tons of power, tons of internet connections, lots of cooling, lots of servers. They're scaled across multiple cities, states, all over the United States. A small company just isn't going to want to afford that. So you have to kind of consider what you can afford there when it comes in terms of scalability there. Or sorry, in terms of stability there. The second thing is security. So I think this is kind of just boils down to a personal preference. The whole discussion on security can go off. We could talk for an hour on that. But in terms of going to cloud or not, when you talk security, it's how secure is my data. And again, this comes down to personal preference. Some people like having their data in their own IT closet, their own data center. They know exactly who has access to it. And to them, that's secure. That's the most secure way it could possibly be. If you consider the flip side of that, Microsoft 365, for example, they have your data in multiple data centers. Lots of people have access to those servers. I'm sure they have a million different precautions for allowing people to have access to those data centers, much more than you would have in your smaller business, I should say, would have in their environment. But it just kind of depends on the mentality of the business owner, the person that's kind of driving this decision. Cost, I've already referenced it a couple times here. That's probably the third most important factor that I would consider there. This is really simple to go through. Just go through a quick financial analysis with your CFO, your controller, anybody really. Pull up an Excel spreadsheet and look at the cost. The servers typically last about 5 years, 3 years if you're aggressive, 7 years if you're trying to stretch it out a little bit. When you buy your own local environment, there's a lot of just an upfront one-time cost. You can take that and depreciate it over time and spread it out as long as you want, so you get the biggest bang for your buck there. When you do try to apply that same scenario with cloud, you just can't, because although there isn't a big upfront cost, you're just paying every single month. So, plan out a 5 to 7 year spreadsheet and see what the cost would be local versus cloud, and you can kind of, that'll help decide whether, that'll help with the cost factor, whole decision there, I should say. Scalability is the last thing to consider. Not that it's not important, but I guess it's just the last factor that I think people should consider. And scalability is nothing more than how fast you want to grow your business. Using that 5 year mark as an example, if you're going to grow your business, tenfold in 5 years, it's a lot easier to scale your business in the cloud. With the Microsoft 365 example, you just click a new user account, click a new mailbox, you create a new one. You're not at all worrying about your infrastructure and whether or not it can support the scalability of adding that many users. If you know that you're not going to be growing a whole lot over the next 5 years and you can actually predict it, well, then you can predict what kind of infrastructure you want to buy and analyze the cost, take a look at maybe security, if that's one of the important factors to you, and make sure it's a stable environment. But take those things into consideration, and if you can scale to that, then great, you're good to go.
All right, I've made the decision. I want to move my data to the cloud. What's the first step?
Yeah, so I have this drawing, which I think will kind of help provide a visual here. Let me know if you can see it there. Nice. So on the left, we have the local environment. On the right, we have the cloud environment, and it's pretty straightforward. You have the user computers, and they connect to the network, and they're basically just connecting to all of these local servers down here that are running the IT services that you run. So email, user account, i.e. Active Directory, accessing files, everybody has a shared file system. And then in this case, I'm kind of thinking of a law firm with time and billing, or a consulting company. They're going to have some kind of practice management server. So again, the idea is to take all of those services down here and get rid of them. They're in the local environment. You're paying for those servers. They cost money. You have to power them. You have to cool them. You have to make sure that they're scalable. You have to make sure they're stable. All those factors that just kind of went over. And you don't want to have to worry about those things. So over on the right here, you take those two solutions, and you're really just you're paying somebody else to host those things. You don't care how they do it. You don't care what kind of infrastructure they're using. All you care about is your user computers connect to the network, they get out to the internet, and they can access everything. So yeah, that's kind of the differences between the two there.
Then moving forward to obviously testing into migration.
Yeah, as far as next steps there, right? So that kind of gives you just a quick layout of what it looks like if you want a local or cloud environment. The first thing you want to do is you want to plan it out. And the way I like to start any kind of plan is just sit down and have a discussion and consider all the factors that are involved with planning. Look at where you're moving. If you're moving email, great. What affects email? All right, well, you have docket entries. If you're a law firm, you need to know what dates you have filings due and dates you have court appointments. What systems integrate with that? Docketing system, does that integrate with email? If it does, consider all of those factors. So just start brainstorming and consider who's affected, what other IT services are affected by it, and make sure you have all of that information incorporated into the plan. Then you write out a logical plan, step by step. Here's what we do first. Here's what we're affecting first, and you create the steps essentially to complete the migration. In doing so, a next quick step for that is just testing everything. So you find a small group of people that are welcome to IT changes and new solutions basically, and you pick that group of 5 or so, as many as you basically can, and go through the planning, what you just planned out with them, to make sure that the plan A works. And every time you go through this, you're going to always refine the plan. And then you just take some information out of that test group or that test scenario. It'll just kind of help you prepare more for the rest of the migration. It'll give you some more information to communicate to people so that you can set better expectations with the rest of the migration. So now you've planned it out, you've brainstormed, you've tested everything, you've sort of refined your plan, and the next logical step is to just go through the migration with the rest of people. And that's what you do. You just split them up into groups, always into chunks. Depending on what kind of migration you want to do, most time you split it into chunks so that it just affects less people at a time. And you complete the migration. And then once everything's migrated over and everyone's accessing data on the new cloud solution, typically there's a decommissioning process for that server that's sitting in the environment still. You want to, if there's still data on there, you want to take that data, move it off to an archive, and then you go through some software steps to decommission the process.
So all the data's been transferred.
Yep.
The process is entirely over, particularly from the client to the IT provider's relationship. Maintenance and security is still essential moving forward.
Yeah, so this is still a solution. It's still an IT service that you need to look at and manage and maintain on a routine basis. I throw the word maintenance there very generically out there. If you're on 365, you're going to have a bunch of users. If you have 100 employees in your company and you have 150 users in your 365, well, that's 50 users you might not have to pay for. And that's 50 users who, on the security side, that might, still have access and probably shouldn't. So of those users, some of the users might have limitations on their mailboxes depending on what type of solution you implement with 365. So you still need to maintain it. You still need to keep an eye on it. You still need to manage it properly and watch over it on a routine basis.
Really good information. If you want a more comprehensive description of vitaltech's perspective on best migrating to the cloud, be sure to check out a 30-minute podcast on this said topic via vitaltechsolutions.com. We have a blog, a podcast, and a video webinar on this topic and a variety of different issues. Please check them all out. Sean, thank you for the time.
Thank you, guys.